Honor Magic 6 RSR versus Honor Magic 7 Pro. Camera comparison, which one will come on top? Let's get started. Sunny day here in Wesel, Germany, and if you ask me why I'm comparing the Magic 6 RSR versus the 7 Pro and not the 6 Pro versus 7 Pro, because the 6 RSR is my daily driver currently, so I have it always with me. And on a spontaneous trip with my daughter and my wife and Timmy, I thought, oh, let's give it a try them both out. Very similar specs, as you can see here on the screen, triple lens setup on both. We have an upgraded telezoom lens here on the 7 Pro and a slightly downgraded front-facing camera because the 6 RSR has still autofocus. And I think we start off with the front-facing video. Front-facing video now here on the Magic 7 Pro. This one sadly doesn't have autofocus, so if I hold it in here you can see the exposure changes but not the autofocus point. We have 0.8 times magnification. I can also go to 1x here if I want to. This is 1x, so what do you think about this one here? Sun's still shining on my face. Now it stopped. I'm in the shadow here. So what do you think about this one here in comparison to the Magic 6 RSR? 4K 60 frames per second is possible. 0.8 times now is, I think, the perfect vlogging kind of ability. The only downside here is that the 7 Pro doesn't have any autofocus, which would be ideal for vlogging. What do you think about this one here? Front-facing video here on the Magic 6 RSR. And this one has autofocus, which is pretty cool, so I can hold it in. So the Magic 7 Pro in here, and you can see it is focusing on it very nicely. The only downside that we have on this front-facing camera is that we don't have 4K 60 frames per second, just 4K 30 frames per second. We have 0.8 times magnification, but I can also go to 1 times magnification. Sun is shining directly onto my face. This is why probably I'm looking a bit weird. What do you think about the quality here on the Magic 6 RSR? And I'm recording with the Magic 7 Pro, also f2. It has a variable aperture, f1.4 to f2. And yeah, with the sun in the background, definitely f2. And it stays at f2 like this. 4K 30, 4K 60 frames per second, no 120 frames per second in 4K or 8K. It's not possible with the Honor. 0.6 times magnification, so I can zoom out here to the ultra wide angle. What do you think about this one here? Definitely as good as the one on the Magic 6 RSR when it comes to vloggability. And now let's try to zoom in on something like this church tower that I showed you already in the past. Here we don't have a 2x zoom for some reason. We can just go 1x and then directly 2.6x, which is the new 200 megapixel sensor. And then I can go up to 10 times zoom, which I reach now. So what do you think? Which one is clearer, this one or the Magic 6 RSR? On screen at least, this one looks a little bit clearer. So what do you think about this one here? And let's go back to 1x. Didn't show a zoom animation. Weird. Main camera sensor now on the Magic 6 RSR. f2 because sun in the background, so it tries to close down the aperture. If I go like this, it still will remain at f2 because the aperture is not changing so much, and usually it's like at f2. What do you think about the dynamic range here? Main camera sensor OV50K on the 6 RSR should be in theory better than the 7 Pro. Good stabilization as well. 4K 30, 4K 60 frames per second, not anything more. Ultra wide angle here. So we don't have 8K, we don't have 4K 120 frames per second. This is the ultra wide angle for vlogging, definitely also pretty good. And let's try to zoom in on something. Let's try to zoom in on this church there in the background. So we're directly jumping to 2x zoom, then 2.6x zoom, which is the 180 megapixel periscope zoom. And then we can go up to 10x. So what do you think about this one here? So front-facing video comparison, what we can see here, the 7 Pro has much more punchier colors. In the background you can see the green, the grass there, and it's much more realistic kind of colors on the 6 RSR, which is not so punchy because we don't have summer here. We have just simply the transition from winter maybe to spring with a bit of sun out now. And when it comes to the detail levels and sharpness, you can see that the 7 Pro has my face really sharpened up there and a bit of more contrast added. where on the 6 RSR it is a bit softer for sure. It's not so sharpened up. and there's not so much contrast added. Look at the sides, for example, and compare it here, the rating, for example. Bokeh kind of is here as well on the 7 Pro, which is quite nice. And there's of course a little bit bokeh there on the 6 RSR as well. In terms of stabilization, if you have both running, you can see very, very nice. It's just the autofocus is not there on the 7 Pro, where the 6 RSR has this. When it comes to like in the shadows going in, and by the way, switching the lenses, both like have like a directly switch, and yeah, both are doing like this brightening up, so exposing on the face. So this, you can see the big difference there. The Magic 7 Pro is like in everything there. You can see the over processing, over punchiness of the colors there a lot, where here on the 6 RSR you can see the HDR, maybe the outlines there a lot more, but the colors are more realistic even in this situation. So this is the front facing camera, which I like better on the 6 RSR. So now let's take a look at the main camera video. What we can see here is we have better HDR on the Magic 6 RSR. So in video mode, it shows the better HDR. I couldn't make it show up in photos, but probably in photos it will also have a little bit of better HDR thanks to the low-fig sensor that we have on the Magic 6 RSR. You can see it here in the sky with the clouds, where here it's a bit overexposure there in the clouds. What we have on the Magic 7 Pro is the over sharpness again, a bit over sharpened, just like on the front-facing camera. You can see it here, eyebrows and so on. And in this case, when I run it, you can even see sometimes artifacts here, sharpening artifacts, like a little bit of pixels jumping around there, because it's sharpening up the face so much that it's like unnatural looking. The Magic 6 RSR is doing better in this case. You can see it also better with the lens flare. You can see it's much softer there, better, doesn't have these artifacts there. Maybe it's getting a bit too dark in this situation there, where both are pretty similar there. And there's a bit of more bokeh, I think, on the 6 RSR. But you can see already that this over sharpness here on my hair and so on is just simply sharpening things up a little bit too much on the Magic 7 Pro, in my opinion. Maybe it's getting a bit too dark now, eventually, on the 6 RSR. But let's compare it in terms of like stabilization. Both are doing very, very fine there. Not much of a difference there. Let's check out the, if you zoom out, the animation is the same. It appears to be a bit wider on the 7 Pro, but what I want to show you is one big thing with the over sharpening. Look at the face now, how soft it looks like, and look how it was looking like here. And this is now the difference. This to this is a huge difference. And you will notice that when you switch from the main to the ultra wide angle. I was criticizing it on Xiaomi 15 Pro. I have to criticize it here as well, where on the Magic 6 Pro, switching here to here is not so much of a jump, because yes, it's not as over sharpened as on the 7 Pro, but it's not a huge jump here in terms of like the difference between those two. Otherwise, what we can see in terms of colors, again, much more punchy colors on the 7 Pro, where it's a bit more realistic on the 6 Pro. You can see it here with the stones in the background. They don't appear so yellow as they appear here on the Magic 7 Pro, and the ultra wide angle shows this as well. Let's try to zoom in on something. So let's compare the zoom. By the way, lens flare effect, both struggle a little bit, but I think the lenses here are still a bit better on the 6 RSR. Also, when we go back, slightly back, you can see that also the 6 RSR has a bit of better HDR there. Yes, you can see it here with the outlines, the white outlines there, but here it's completely overexposed. The sky's white, where you can see a little bit of bluish still going on there, and not everything white here. There's a little bit of more details there on the 6 RSR. You can maybe see this here as well. Much brighter, wider, white. Might have something to do with the lens and the 12mm instead of 13mm, but it appears to be a bit of better HDR on the 6 RSR. So let's try the zoom in to see the big difference there, especially when it comes to switching. You saw the switch change here from 2 times to 2.5 times, so to the telephoto periscope, where here, let's switch there. Yeah, there's also a switch, but it's not as drastic, where here it's getting a lot darker on the Magic 6 RSR, like compared with here, which is still a crop of the main, to here, which is like a lot darker. Where here, oops, this was a bit too far, where here you can see it actually getting a bit darker and then switching to a bit brighter shot. In terms of detail level here, when we take a look at this, this is 3x versus 2. This is basically 2.5x. Actually, there we go. Not much of a difference. There's a bit of darker exposure there. Look at the rooftops, look at the tiles, almost the same. There's not much difference there, and this focal length there. It becomes very interesting when you zoom in even further here at 10 times, for example, versus 10 times here. And when I stop it now, you can clearly see here, this is 10 times on the 7 Pro, and this is 10 times on the 6 RSR. I think the 7 Pro looks a bit nicer. There's a detail level, maybe not so much difference, but it seems to be a bit noisier on the 6 RSR. It's very, very close. It's very, very hard to tell which one is the winner here. Rendering is almost the same there. Maybe a slight win to the Magic 7 Pro, but it's like, I don't see it so much, I have to say. I really don't see it. We stop and start again. I had my first impression was there's a bit of more color noise going on already on the 6 RSR. It's not so much on the 7 Pro, but this is the only difference that I see. So very, very close together. I think in video, zoom, they're doing pretty much the same here. Let's check out the photos. On the left always the Honor Magic 7 Pro, on the right always the Magic 6 RSR. For some reason I forgot to turn on the watermark on the 6 RSR, so we have to live with this one. But I will tell you the major differences. I can show you also the major differences. It's f2 here and it's 27 millimeters instead of 24 millimeters f2, and the ISO is 100, and the shutter speed, as far as you can see here, is a little bit slower or lower on the Magic 7 Pro as on the Magic 6 RSR. We have the better sensor in theory, with low fix support on the 6 RSR. Let's check out the differences. Of course, the field of view, 24 millimeters, so have a bit of wider field of view on the Magic 7 Pro. In terms of detail levels and so on, you can see pretty much the same. Not a lot of differences. There's just a tiny bit of over sharpening I see here on the 7 Pro. That is not so much on the 6 RSR. Both have like the natural color profile turned on, because I think this is the best one. Of course, I think by default it's set to vivid on both, but don't get the vivid one. In terms of like detail levels and so on, of course, we have a bit more crop, so sometimes a bit more details on the 6 RSR. But in daylight, you can see almost the same, not much of a difference between those two there in terms of the detail level, and colors are pretty much the same as well. But yeah, you can see there's a bit of bokeh, a bit of softness going on here, especially like if you have like a focus point difference there. Not so much on the 7 Pro, because everything is sharp, because it's like sharpening things up, and you don't have this like bokeh effect so much like we have here, because the focus was on those here, where you can clearly see they're both focusing on it. It's a bit more sharpening up on the 7 Pro, but this is what you get with the main sensor. Let's go to the ultra wide angle. I told you already that the 6 RSR has a better coating and better lenses than the 6 Pro. And here we can also see there's a slight difference in terms of millimeters, because the 7 Pro has now a new lens which is 12 millimeters wide. f2 as well. And also on the 6 RSR we have f2 and we have ISO 50 on both, and a little bit of slower shutter speed on the 6 RSR.
In terms of differences, there's, I think, a bit of warmth to the picture, a bit more warmth to the picture on the 7 Pro, but it's just tiny bit in terms of those differences. In terms of HDR, however, I think that there is a slightly bit better HDR handling on the 7 Pro. You can see here the green grass, for example, which is a bit overexposed on the 6 RSR. In terms of detail level, both very, very similar, just like a slight overexposure, which is a bit darker here on the 7 Pro. And yeah, the differences in terms of millimeters is like in the middle, you don't notice it so much. So very, very comparable with each other there, the ultra wide angle there. But what I can see as well is like it's getting a bit softer, quicker on the 7 Pro than on the 6 RSR. So the 6 RSR has, I still think, the better lens. You can see it's like a lot softer here, where it's here, even towards the side, a lot better. And the coating is a bit better, as you can see here. I was standing at the same exact point and taking this photo. Of course, it could be like, because the lenses are in a different position, a difference there. But yeah, overall, I think the sharpness and detail level on the 6 RSR might be a little bit better than on the 7 Pro. This is like an optical thing, a lens thing here, but you be the judge. They're very, very comparable here with each other. Then selfies here. I had, for some reason, on selfie the watermark on the 6 RSR. As you can see here, both very, very similar, I would say. There's a bit more natural kind of looking 6 RSR, I think, there, where the 7 Pro is yeah, a little bit softer looking there, for sure. It's a bit more reddish face, a bit more yellowish and greenish face. In terms of like the bokeh, I think there the 7 Pro is doing much better, where we can see the 6 RSR is struggling a little bit. Also here, it's struggling here as well, but it's not yeah, cutting out the hair out completely like the 6 RSR is doing there. So yes, in terms of sharpness level, however, you can see because it's much softer here, and we have autofocus on the front-facing camera on the 6 RSR. I think the 6 RSR is taking the lead here. But in terms of cutouts, the 7 Pro is doing a bit better. Let's try zooming in. This is 72 millimeters now on the 7 Pro. The 6 RSR has 68 millimeters, so there's a slight difference in terms of the zoom level. We have a 200 megapixel sensor. It's cropping, of course, also down to 12 megapixels. It should be 12 megapixels. Where is it written? 14 megapixels actually, where here it's 12.6 megapixels. So there is a bit of a difference there. Otherwise, you can see f2.6. We have f2.6 here as well. ISO 200, ISO 250. So a little bit more on the Magic 7 Pro, but it's within the margins, I would say. So let's check out the difference in terms of their native zoom. This is like the 2.5 or 2.6x zoom on both. It's just like because the Magic 7 Pro starts from 24 millimeters. It's 3x zoom, I think, on the Magic 7 Pro. It starts from 24 millimeters and it's 2.6 here. Let's check out the detail level. And yeah, what can I say here? Exposure much nicer handled on the 6 RSR, I would say. So it's a bit overexposed here, especially this plate you can see from my daughter, which is also slightly overexposed, but not as much overexposed as here, where you don't see the ending here of the rail, where here you can see it clearly. And when it comes to colors, detail levels, sharpness, and so on, it's brightening things up there in the background, where here it's keeping it a little bit darker there. But look at all the textures, and it looks much more natural on the 6 RSR. Also the text here, and compare it with here. Here it seems like it's overdoing some over-processing, over-sharpening. It feels like maybe a crop that's applied. Same goes for here, slightly out of focus. Much nicer here on the 6 RSR. Let's go to the next one, which is 144 millimeters. Try to match it with the 6 RSR, because there's a 5 times zoom button on the 6 RSR and there's a 6 times zoom button on the Magic 7 Pro. Again, different focal lengths. It's a bit more zoomed in on the Magic 7 Pro. So 144 f2.6. Here as well, f2.6, 135 millimeter, ISO 200 versus ISO 160. Do we notice a much of a difference there? In terms of like shutter speed, the same, by the way. Yes, now it turns again, which is quite interesting because now we have a little slightly more overexposure there on the 6 RSR than on the 7 Pro, I would say. But when it comes to like detail levels and so on, you can see, yes, because a bit zoomed in more, the little texts there are a bit more readable on the 7 Pro for sure, but not by a huge margin, I would say. And again, when we look at the textures and so on, yeah, there's a bit overexposed there. How does it compare? Very, very, very similar on both there. And we have some other things here. You can see both have a bit of trouble with it. But this text is a bit in particular, and here looks a slightly bit better on the 7 Pro. Now you can zoom in even further, 288 times, which is, I have to like calculate it, but what is it, 12 times zoom now, which is like a static thing that you can select on the Magic 7 Pro. So there's like a lock, it's at 12 times. It's like double 6 times, maybe that's the reason. And we have 10 times now on the 6 RSR because it's also a static lock. There's no 12 times static lock there on this one. But because it's like zoomed in a bit further, because we start from 27mm, it's pretty comparable as you can see here. But yes, there's a bit more detail on the 7 Pro as you can see here in comparison to the 6 RSR. So this is definitely visible with a little bit more detail, more readable text there, especially this text, which can still read here. Here's a bit harder to read. And as soon as I go down here as well, the little text and the little details there at the bottom there, also more readable on the 7 Pro. And the more you zoom in, the more it becomes obvious here. Now 734, which is divided by 24, 30 times zoom. And this here should be also 30 times zoom roughly. It's a bit more cropped in, of course, but yeah, look at this here, compare it with this. It is more readable on the 7 Pro. So yes, the 7 Pro seems to have like the better zoom here when it comes to zooming in comparison to the 6 RSR. There's another one which is like with AI enabled. So this is without AI, this is with AI enabled. And there you can see it's even a little bit better when you compare it to the non-enabled one in reconstructing the text. So yeah, the 7 Pro has a better zoom lens there. Let's check out the portrait shots, because this is very interesting, because we have hardcore portrait mode on the Magic 7 Pro, where on the 6 RSR we don't have hardcore portrait mode. So both now at 2x here, hardcore portrait mode, it's not showing you the references or the options there, but it's 2x, it's 48 here because we have 24mm the default 1x, and here it's 54 millimeters, f2.8 versus f1.4. Quite interesting. Why is it switching to f2.8 here? Because it's like using the main camera sensor and then apparently switching to f2.8 with the aperture there. ISO is a bit lower on the 7 Pro, where on the 6 RSR it's a bit higher. Shutter speed is identical, but here it keeps wide open. Quite interesting to see that. Now let's check it out. Maybe it has something to do with the bokeh as well. Yeah, the bokeh is much more pronounced there. In terms of detail levels here, what do you think? Which one is doing better there? It's like this one is over sharpening a bit. It's reconstructing the eyes and the eyebrows. And this one is soft. It's really, really soft. I like the eye color a little bit better here on the 6 RSR. It's very soft. It's not the strong point of the 6 RSR. I think the 7 Pro is doing a bit better there. It's not the best for sure, especially when you compare it, like you saw my comparison against the Oppo Find X8 Pro or others. Portrait shots is not Honor's cup of tea, but the 7 Pro is doing better than the 6 RSR for the 2x zoom. Now this is 3x, 72 versus 68, which is 2 point something x there. And again, there's like a difference, like this decided to do f4 with the fake background, and this decided to do f1.4. ISO is a bit higher on the 7 Pro in comparison to the 6 RSR. And yeah, let's check it out. We can see it immediately is much nicer face color on the 6 RSR because it's a natural face color, where it's much more yellow and much more contrasty look on the Magic 7 Pro. But this is the hardcore filter that they have in there. And I said already, not the vivid hardcore filter, but the original or natural hardcore filter. Still, it is a lot more pronounced. And you see the shirt also more black. Yeah, it was once black, but it is in this light conditions more looking towards what the 6 RSR is doing. When we take a look at the detail levels here and compare it with here, you can see that it's much overcooked, much more overcooked on the 7 Pro, and I dislike it completely because it's so over sharpened, so fake looking. The hair, everything is like too much sharpening applied. It even looks like I have gray hair or something like this. Where here on the 6 RSR, it is not perfect in any stretch of the imagination. It's also a bit over sharpening, but it's much better looking if you compare 7 Pro versus 6 RSR. This one, 6 RSR, I would take it any day because this one is just, don't crop in. It's like, even if you crop out, I don't like the hardcore filter modes, I have to say. They don't look nice to me because the face is just too yellowish and there's too much contrast in there. And it's not the good kind of contrast, micro contrast or so on. And the other thing is like, yeah, we have much more pronounced bokeh there. This is like, because for some reason it has f4 and this one has f1.4. I don't know why. Maybe I set it up wrong. Let's go to the next one, which is now, what is it? 144, which is 6 times, and here it's 5 times portrait. Again, f4, f1.4. Sorry about that. Otherwise 13 versus 12 megapixels, but again, more yellowish, more contrasty face, so we have still the 67 Pro consistent there. And it doesn't look good. And here it doesn't look good either, I would say, but it looks more natural. Like the eyebrows look more natural. Yet it's soft, the 5 times on the 6 RSR. And this is like a bit over sharpened and overcooked. And here recreated everything there a little bit. Still, by any stretch of the imagination, because of the colors and the over sharpening look on the 7 Pro, I have to take the 6 RSR for the portraits here. I'm shocked by this because I heard that the hardcore filters are also coming to the 6 RSR and 6 Pro. I hope they have at least an option to get the normal face color again, or they don't do this much over sharpening because it just doesn't look right to me. And this is in terms of like daylight photos. Like I said, main camera photos, I didn't notice much of a difference. There might be a difference in more challenging situations with HDR. Maybe you saw it in video as well, where the 6 RSR has a benefit there. And we will maybe see differences also at night when we compare the night photos there. Otherwise, pretty good, done both. And also the ultra wide angle is a bit wider on the 7 Pro in terms of detail levels and so on. I think the 7 Pro has a slight edge in terms of HDR here. In this case, where the 6 RSR is a bit more overexposed, but in terms of detail levels, I don't notice much of a difference. It's just when you go towards the edges, then it appears to me that the 6 RSR has the better lens set up there with a little bit more sharpness and less chromatic aberrations that have to be calculated out and yeah, such things here. But you can be the judge there. You can see here much more details there. There's a little bit more mushy, yeah, very, very close here. Maybe slight edge towards the 6 RSR, but probably the same. Selfies, I think, both are doing a nice job. It's a bit more reddish face on the 6 RSR, but I think that the 7 Pro is winning with the portrait cutouts there. But the rest is looking a bit better on the 6 RSR because of the autofocus that helps tremendously. Zoom is a bit of a mixed bag for the standard zooms like the 3x or 2.5x and then the 5x and the 6x. Zoom, I think it is, the more you zoom in, it is going to the Magic 7 Pro, where the 6 RSR is just losing against this. And otherwise, yeah. Zoom, the more you zoom in, the more the Magic 7 Pro wins here at daylight. In terms of portrait shots, I like the 6 RSR overall a bit better, than the 7 Pro, because I don't like the hardcore portrait shot, that everything is like much too contrasty, much too over sharpened, and much too yellow face. What is your opinion? Write it down in the comments.
Magic 7 Pro here, 4K 30 frames per second, recording internal mics and walking towards a little light source there. We have a loaded sensor here, actually it's the same one as in the Magic 6 Pro. So how does this compete with the 6 RSR or the 6 Pro? We will figure this out in a few seconds. So what do you think about this one here in terms of stabilization in colors and noise? How well does it work? So nighttime video on the Magic 6 RSR, internal mics, what do you think about this one here? It's recording 4K 30 frames per second, but I think it's going down to 24 frames per second as well when it detects like a little bit too low light here. What do you think about the stabilization? What do you think about the colors? How does this compete with the Magic 7 Pro?
Night photos, again, sorry for not having the watermark on the 6 RSR, but I can shortly blend it in. What we have here, 1/17th of a second is the same exposure time, f2, same aperture, and ISO 5000, even the same ISO. But what you can see here on first glances already, we have a bit of brightened up shot on the Magic 7 Pro, but it seems to be a bit soft. And when you zoom in, you can clearly see what's going on there. It's for some reason very soft, and I thought I might have shaked it. I took the shot again, and it always ended up like this. So either the stabilization is not so good, the electronic one, or there is an issue with the software, or it's just simply an issue with the lens, or I don't know what's going on there. It's just like always a bit shaky. Yes, towards the side it has to go a little bit in terms of detail levels, but the detail levels are so poor there on the 7 Pro that I think in the end I have to give the 6 RSR's ultra wide angle a little bit more point than the 7 Pro, because the 7 Pro is failing completely at night, because this one is an unusable almost shot, and the 6 RSR gives us not the best shot, but at least a bit of a usable shot, I would say. Same goes for the sides here. You can see the DHL logo almost not readable there, and look at this here, much sharper already towards very side there. It's just completely failing on the 7 Pro. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's the ISO. 6 RSR clear winner here. Main camera shot, on first glance you would say, oh, Magic 7 Pro again, brighter shot, a bit darker shot than the 6 RSR. You can see that we have, in terms of like a difference 24 against 27 millimeters, of course, in terms of ISO, a little bit lower ISO on the 6 RSR, so 2000 instead of 3200. 1/17th of a second, the same kind of like, which is I think the norm when you take the night shots. Both took a night shot. That means like you have to hold it still for a few seconds, and then it takes a shot. Either the software on the 7 Pro is having an issue, but again it's very shaky and not pretty sharp. On the 6 RSR it's a bit dark, but it at least is sharp, as you can see here. So there is some issue maybe with the nighttime photography and the nighttime proceeding. When the night mode kicks in, it's shaky on the 7 Pro, so they maybe have to fix this. Otherwise, the detail level, because it's shaky, of course, your detail levels are a bit better again here on the 6 RSR for sure. Next shot at nighttime. Now the brightness helps a little bit to see what you're really doing here. This is the 3x zoom versus the 2.5x zoom, and I can show you shortly here. Yes, 68 versus 72 millimeters, f2.6 versus f1.4. This helps tremendously on the Magic 7 Pro, but that also means if it's f1.4 here, it's just to crop in from the main, because the 3x doesn't have f1.4. So to crop in from the main that we have here on the Magic 7 Pro, where the 6 RSR is really using its 2.5 times zoom lens here. ISO 6400, 6400 is very much the same. 1/5 of a second even exposure time, so longer exposure time, because we have like the smaller sensor that we're using here. And here we're just using the main sensor. So what does it mean now? Again, the same. I think the 7 Pro has a problem with nighttime photography. Very blurry, not much detail. And if I go in here, it's a night and day comparison. Much more detail, much sharper there. Look at the crown, those little bulks there, little balls on the crown, visible here, completely not visible. And the text, if it would be a bit brighter, would be readable even. And when you go in here as well, much nicer looking, of course, in terms of detail level on the 6 RSR. So at nighttime, 6 RSR is completely destroying the 7 Pro so far. Let's take a look at more zoom, 144 times, which is 6x zoom on the Magic 7 Pro versus 5 times zoom here, 135 millimeters, f2.6. So it's still using the periscope zoom. Now f2.6, it's also using the periscope zoom, 200 megapixel one, ISO 3200 on both, and 1/11, 1/10 of a second should be roughly the same. What we can see here is much more contrasty look on the Magic 7 Pro. Both handle the lights sources pretty good, I would say. There's a bit of a difference here. I think it's a bit more overexposed on the 6 RSR, but this one here looks very weird. What's going on there? So you can see this one is like more uniformly, but this one here has like as if there were lines in between. I'm not sure what's going on there. In terms of detail levels, don't be fooled by the bit more contrast that we have on the 7 Pro. There's absolutely no difference between those two. Besides like the 7 Pro bit more zoomed in maybe, there's absolutely no difference there between those two. In terms of detail levels and other things there. The colors are a bit more greenish maybe, a little bit more warmish here, a bit darker here. Look at this here, for example. I think a bit more brightened up because you can see the black text there. That is like, you can also see it, but barely. See, there's a bit of a difference there, but here, for example, because the 7 Pro is over sharpening maybe a little bit more, this is sharp and this is sharp, where here this is a bit more sharp, this is a bit out of focus, so you have a bit of a depth effect in here. But you be the judge, you can tell me if I'm wrong there, and both are a little bit looking but bad, but for me, absolutely no difference between those two that I would say in terms of points there. I showed you, of course, the differences, but there's a points level. Which one would I give more points? This one looks a bit over processed. This one looks a bit more greenish. Absolutely the same. Selfies in the night are, yeah, on first glance looking better on the 7 Pro because of the bit more contrast that we have added and the redrawn eyebrows and eyes and so on, and lips as well. Bokeh level, first of all, nice on both, not much of a difference. Both, by the way, have 25 millimeters f2 and ISO 2000 on the Magic 7 Pro and 12550 on the 6 RSR. 120s, 170s of a second. So yeah, it's balancing themselves out there. When we zoom in, what you can see here, of course, is like a much over processed 7 Pro, and you can see a bit softer 6 RSR with some weird pattern that I see, like checkerboard pattern if you look a little bit closer. But yeah, which one you like better? Just like in daylight and portrait shots, I like the 6 RSR a bit better. Not because it looks more detailed or so on, the 7 Pro looks more detailed, but it's just because it's over sharpening, redrawn the eyebrows, and it's just, you know, yes, over a bit sharpening up, redrawing eyebrows can help with the detail levels, but here I think it's like too much that the 7 Pro is doing. You can have a different opinion, you can write it on the comments, but I look uglier on the 7 Pro than I look on the 6 RSR. And I prefer the 6 RSR for that matter. Same goes for my hair. It's just not over sharpened, which this is doing it. And yeah, in terms of like the bokeh and the bokeh balls, yeah, okay, that was the bokeh ball there. There's a bit of bokeh ball and the focus fall off. You can see, I think they're doing a good job with this, both. My preference is the 6 RSR. Because I don't like the much too contrasty and sharpened up look on the 7 Pro. Another shot with the main camera sensor just to show you the differences between those two, and here you can see we have a brighter shot on the 6 RSR here. Might have something to do with maybe the conditions, because you can see it's a car passing by, but it might also have something to do with the sensor here, f1.4, 27 versus 24 millimeters, 400 ISO versus 320, so this might also explain why it's a bit brightened up there, 1/20th of a second on both in terms of shutter speed. When you take a look at the detail levels here, we see the same that we saw before, much more contrasty look, much more punchy colors on the 7 Pro. This is why everything is a bit more yellowish there. And here's a bit more realistic color actually on the 6 RSR, because it wasn't this yellowish looking, of course not. Yes, it is a bit yellowish, warmish looking, but not this much as the 7 Pro is making it look like. In terms of detail levels, when you go to the side here you can see that better lens setup, I think, on the 6 RSR is a bit sharper there, a bit more details there. Look at the trees there as well. But it is also a bit more cropped in. Of course, this might have also something to do with this. So very close again to what we said about the daylight shots. There's not much of a difference that I can see. In theory, the 6 RSR should have better HDR. Maybe in video mode you will see it. But in photo mode here, sharpness level, yeah, this is looks a bit sharper because it's a bit more sharpened up there. And has a bit more contrast added. And when we go here, the light sources, for example, both handle them pretty much the same. It's a bit more yellowish and punchy here, but they're pretty much handling it the same there. So yeah, I don't see much of a difference here between those two in terms of like the detail levels and so on. So yes, the Magic 7 Pro is doing a good job, maybe even a better job than the 6 Pro. But it's very comparable to the 6 RSR and it's not doing a better job, especially at nighttime. And here, by the way, why did it not fail and was like blurry? Because the night mode didn't kick in on the Magic 7 Pro, neither did it on the 6 RSR. There was enough light for both not to let the night mode kick in, even though we have 1/20th of a second exposure time. So overall, I think the 6 RSR is beating the 7 Pro, but mostly it has to do with the night mode that is somehow a failure on the Magic 7 Pro because everything is a bit blurry there. And yeah, otherwise the zoom is surprisingly a little bit better as well on the 6 RSR, at least at the 2.5x in comparison to the 3x. And when it comes to 5x versus 6x, I think they're basically the same. And the AI is not working in night mode or in too dark conditions on the Magic 7 Pro, so it cannot really rescue the Magic 7 Pro. Overall, whole night modes photography, I think the 6 RSR is winning here against the Magic 7 Pro. If you have a different opinion, you can write down in the comment section what you think about this one. Let's come to the ranking and conclusion. TLDR, the Honor Magic 6 RSR gets 4.510 points and the Honor Magic 7 Pro gets 4.430 points. Where are the differences now? Main camera photo quality is not a huge difference, both 4.8 points, where I think, yeah, in theory we have the better sense on the Magic 6 RSR, especially when it comes to the HDR situations. In practice, you probably are not shooting so much against the sun where you will see the difference there. There's a slight difference in terms of night mode where we have faster capturing on the Magic 6 RSR because most often it doesn't need to kick in night mode, where in the Magic 7 Pro it has to. Ultra wide camera photo quality, I decided to keep them both at 4.2 because at daylight there's not much of a difference. There's an advantage on the 7 Pro with a wider field of view. I think there's an advantage on the 6 RSR with better glass. And I think processing and colors are very, very similar. A little bit more punchy, sometimes a bit better HDR on the 7 Pro, sometimes a bit better sharpness and details on the 6 RSR, especially when it comes to the nighttime photos where the 6 RSR shines, where the 7 Pro has some, or at least in my test, had some issues. Zoom camera photo quality, I changed the rating here, not of the 7 Pro because it's still at 4.2 points, but of the 6 RSR. It was before at 4.4 points, and after rechecking and also checking against the Oppo Find X6 Pro that has 4.4 points, I have to go down a little bit there on the 6 RSR because in daylight you don't notice much of a difference. Yes, at 2.5 times shot, I think the 6 RSR is doing slightly better than the Magic 7 Pro, but as soon as you zoom in a bit further, 5 times, versus 6 times. You see already slight improvements there on the Magic 7 Pro's processing, in sharpening up texts, for example, that helps. But in general, it is very, very close, because I think there's a bit more sharpness applied on the Magic 7 Pro, especially at night. You notice that there's a bit more sharpness applied, where the 6 RSR is doing a little bit better there, also with the separation of fore and background. But the 0.1 point more on the Magic 6 RSR is going to 2 factors. One is portrait shots that look much more natural on the Magic 6 RSR. Has something to do with taste, I know, but the hardcore portrait mode with over sharpening, especially the over sharpening, is not doing very well on the Magic 7 Pro. Colors, I can say it might be a stylistic kind of decision, but the over sharpness, it looks so bad on the 7 Pro, where I have to give it to the Magic 6 RSR. And the other thing is the fast focus. And for portrait shots especially, we have the LiDAR sensor there that helps tremendously also with moving subjects. And yes, it is an autofocus feature as well, but it is also a zoom camera photo quality enhancement that we have on the 6 RSR that you don't have on the Magic 7 Pro. So fast shutter speeds, fast focusing, sports and actions is working a bit better on the 6 RSR in zoom camera photo quality. Video recording quality is much better on the Magic 6 RSR. Front-facing camera, much nicer colors, not so over sharpened. Main camera photo quality, video quality on the Magic 7 Pro as well, a little bit over punchy. Better HDR on the Magic 6 RSR. Then we have on the ultra wide angle better HDR. It looks nicer, and when it comes to zoom shots, indistinguishable almost. Maybe slightly less color noise on the Magic 7 Pro, but in terms of detail levels and so on, it looks almost the same. There's just a slight difference there, but both have like issues with color shifting when going to the periscope zoom. On the Magic 7 Pro, it's like brightening a little bit up. On the Magic 6 RSR, it was like darkening things up, but depending on the situation, they have a bit of a color shift when switching to the periscope zoom. Biggest difference is the over sharpness on the Magic 7 Pro on the main camera sensor. When you switch then to the ultra wide angle, you clearly notice the difference there. Where on the Magic 6 RSR, it's a bit softer, and when you switch to the ultra wide angle, you also notice a difference because it's an ultra wide angle, but it's not a huge jump. It is not as bad on the Magic 7 Pro as it is on the 15 Pro, Xiaomi 15 Pro, that has like this completely over sharpened main camera footage. And when you jump then to the ultra wide angle, it's like a day and night difference there. But it is a difference, and yes, Magic 6 RSR I think is better for video recording. Same goes for autofocus performance. We have the LiDAR sensor there on the 6 RSR, and this helps tremendously with autofocus. There is even a mode where you can have background blur. You can use the LiDAR sensor with background blur on all lenses to give you a background blur, even an artificial background blur, because the focusing is so fast and everything in sports mode, which is something that the Magic 7 Pro cannot do. Front camera quality is a tiny bit better on the Magic 6 RSR, not on the colors, not over sharpness and over processed looking most of the time, but also the autofocus performance is a bit better there on the Magic 6 RSR. Which helps tremendously also in certain situations where the fixed focus on the Magic 7 Pro cannot really help. Camera UI is both the same, pretty good. So you have the one-handed usage. You can just swipe up, change your settings, like change your timer, for example. If you want to disable the timer, it's a bit, you can also swipe up again and disable the timer. It's a bit harder because on the left hand then there's a quick toggle that directly goes to the timer menu to disable the timer. It shows it, which is quite nice, and you can change it directly, which is also quite nice with a tap of a button. But if it would be on the right side, so for one-handed use, it would be even better. Extra features, both feature basically the same extra features. They're not nothing to write home about there. What does it mean for the ranking? As I said, I changed the zoom camera photo quality performance of the Magic 6 RSR. So the Magic 6 RSR is going a bit down in my ranking system from number 5, rank number 5, to rank number 8. That means like it's a bit worse than the Oppo Find X6 Pro, which is number 7 there. Main camera photo quality is better on the ultra wide angle is better because larger sensor there, and like I said, the zoom camera photo quality, I was also comparing them between each other, is a bit better. Zoom camera photo quality is one thing where we have to talk about the Magic 6 RSR versus the Magic 7 Pro that is on rank 14 here, as you see. Even a little bit lower than the Magic 6 Pro right now, but we will check again Magic 6 Pro versus Magic 7 Pro to be absolutely sure. I can show you some samples, and I made some shots here. Let me show you this here, for example, to show you that there's not much difference. This is why it's like, yes, I had some shots in the daylight where I said, yeah, the more you zoom in, the Magic 7 Pro becomes better. But here I have like shots 20 times zoom on both, for example, just to show you there's not much of a difference between those two. A bit of lower light in our situations. You can see the Magic 6 RSR, I have now watermark in there. The Magic 6 RSR is doing almost the same as the 7 Pro is doing there in terms of everything can be fine and red there. There's not much of a difference between those two. When it comes to this kind of thing, not enough where I would say it is justified to give this win to the Magic 7 Pro when it comes to the zoom camera photo quality, especially when we also count in the portrait shots and so on. This is 10 times zoom here again against the 6 RSR, and the 6 RSR I think much more natural, not this over sharpened kind of look on the numbers here, for example. Yes, it's doing also some processing that you can see there, but it's much nicer there. So yes, my initial statement is still holding true. The processing sometimes can pull out more information, and we have like a little bit more zoom range definitely on the 7 Pro when it comes to like the lens setup itself, and processing is a bit nicer. But most often when you like the typical zoom ranges, the 6 RSR is doing slightly bit better than the 7 Pro there in this regards, with much more natural looking view. So let's go back to the ranking list. Let's take a look at the 7 Pro. Like I said, it is like a little bit below the 6 Pro. Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Video recording quality is not the case. It's a zoom camera photo quality that is at 4.4 on the 6 Pro, and this probably cannot hold up because we have the 6 RSR at 4.3, and probably this will be also will be corrected in the next test where I'm testing the Magic 6 Pro against the Magic 7 Pro, because the 6 Pro, if the 6 RSR cannot compete against the Oppo Find X6 Pro, then the 6 Pro shouldn't be competing against it as well. So next test will be those two here, and then probably we have the Magic 6 Pro a little bit more down there. Otherwise, what do we have in the same kind of region? The Mate 60 Pro. Though I can tell you immediately already, the zoom camera photo quality here on the Mate 60 Pro might be a little bit worse, especially when it comes to lower light. We have a much smaller sensor there. We have a much closer aperture there, which doesn't help really with light intake. Video recording quality, yes, the Mate 60 Pro is a bit better, and the performance of autofocus is almost the same there. And yeah, the rest you can see there. Xiaomi 13 Ultra we have here as well in the same kind of region there, and I think, yeah, the Magic 7 Pro is a bit better doing there with the front camera performance for sure, because this is one of the Achilles of the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. The front cam would be better than the Xiaomi 13 Ultra would be better. The iPhone is in the same region there, iPhone 15 Pro Max there, as you see, but the main camera sensor will lose. You can see the iPhone 16 Pro is better there than the Magic 7 Pro. Main camera is almost the same. The iPhone has a worse ultra wide angle there than on the Magic 7 Pro. I can tell you for sure that is the case. The zoom camera photo quality, however, is a bit better on the iPhone 16 Pro. Is that really holding up? We will have to check this when I test this against the Magic 7 Pro to be absolutely sure. Otherwise, the video recording quality on the iPhone is better. Yeah, I can tell you immediately, because we have this like artifacts, sometimes over sharpening artifacts on the Magic 7 Pro, and too punchy colors. Yes, the colors are always not always correct on the iPhone 16 Pro either. But yeah, the iPhone is doing a little bit better there, especially zoom in, zoom out, such things like the zoom out effect. Sometimes when you zoom in, completely punched in on the Magic 7 Pro is not working at all. Same goes for the Magic 6 RSR, is something that hopefully they can fix, because others like Oppo, for example, or Vivo are doing this. And I think even Huawei is doing this as well, much better. And yeah, this is my conclusion so far. Like I said, the ranking is not the final ranking, so this year will probably not hold up anymore in the next test, because here the 4.4 is just too much for the zoom camera photo quality on the Magic 6 Pro. It has to go down either to the 4.3 that we have on the Magic 6 RSR, or even 4.2 like on the Honor Magic 7 Pro. We will test them against each other next time to see this then. But yeah, this is the current ranking here, because I was testing at 6 RSR. I cannot test everything at once. So yeah, it will correct itself. Probably will have the Magic 7 Pro at rank 13, I guess. Then I will test it against the iPhone. Maybe it can surpass the iPhone 16 Pro, get the rank 12, or it will stay at rank 13. But this is everything for this video. If you have some suggestions, what to test out, how to do the ranking system and other things there, I know changing the ranking system now after I did so many tests is hard, because I don't have all the phones with me anymore, so I cannot redo all the tests there. But for those phones that I have, and especially which gets updates usually, like the Vivo, the Oppo, I will update the ranking list accordingly, and will correct stuff if I notice that things were like ranked a little bit too high, like the Honor Magic 6 RSR with 4.4 points for the zoom camera photo quality, which cannot hold up if you compare it with the Oppo, for example, Find X6 So that's everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.